welcome back to One-on-One with Mr. U. Of course, I'm your host, Mr. U, in studio with us. Speaker, leadership coach, founder of Craft Leadership, and author of The Great Slapping. Yogi Mueller is in the house. Yogi, how are you, sir? Good to see you, man.
Thank you very much. I tell you, I love that theme song. If that doesn't get you going, you're hopeless. I love it.
Yeah, I very specifically crafted all the songs for our shows, and I might enjoy them more than everybody else, but I think I need to. It perked me up, and so I'm just excited about this conversation, man. But customarily, I always ask our guests to come in and start the show off with sharing about their childhood and their upbringing. What got you from there to where you are right now? Share as much as or little as you like. Go ahead.
You know what, Mr. Yu, I've been extremely blessed in my life. I've had my parents were amazing. I have a brother that I like occasionally, and we grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, okay. And by the end of, I'd say, about 30, 40 years later, we all ended up in Florida. In different places. So by way of Wisconsin and California and Texas and all over the place, we made it back here. So, it's always been a journey for me, just of self exploration and finding the niche that I found, and that is developing other people. But it's been a journey.
Oh, I love that, man. Love that. So you moved all around the country, so I'm sure you got a lot of insights to share. I love that. You spent a little time in Florida, so I know a little bit about that life. But okay, so let's kind of get into when you figured out for yourself that you were in need of mentorship. I love asking the question for somebody who strives to, I guess, major in mentorship spaces.
Yeah.
Sometimes, this is not in your case, Yogi, but sometimes when I meet people who are mentors and leaders and coaches like you and I are, sometimes I find a gap in their mentorship journey, if you will. They cut off the process so they can go do their own thing because of maybe they weren't comfortable being transparent and letting somebody cut on them in a way or whatever it is. When did you figure out personally that you were in need of mentorship?
Great question. And you are absolutely spot on with that. And I share a little bit about this in the book. I guess the awakening slap that I got, and I was working for a marketing company in college, and I was a mess, dude. I was sloppy. I was careless. I didn't care. And this guy, I can picture him today. Can I remember his name? No. But do I remember the pain? It's the pain that sticks, right? And he basically pulled me aside and he said, look. He said, you suck. I mean, in no uncertain terms is what he was saying. He's like, what are you doing? But then he said, look, he says, you've got all of this ability. You've got all this talent, but you show up horribly. He says, that's not, and I remember driving home that day feeling I just got slapped around the head and face, not seeing for what it was, right? And it was that awakening that I was like, oh my God, he's right. And that interaction legitimately changed how I pursue work, being professional, and working with others. That one moment. And I say, I like this phrase, happiness is planting a seed of a tree whose shade you will never enjoy, right? That's my core why in terms of why I do what I do. This guy, that one interaction, I don't even know if he's alive. I don't know what he's doing, but that interaction changed my life. And that there's so much power in that. And then when used responsibly, with genuine investment in other people's, you can change lives.
Well, I love that, man. And you're doing that, man. You stepped into multiple realms like we talked about in the intro, man. You're founded an incredible company, Craft Leadership. You are an author, you speak, and you're driven to teach leadership. Can you tell me why? Well, as a jack of all trades myself, I totally get why there's a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts and everything. But why do you feel like leadership and mentor and teaching and coaching in that realm was your thing? Why did you, because there's so many options out there. Why did you feel like you needed to do that?
It wasn't like an epiphanic, a moment like Don King got his hair, right? It's like it didn't come to me in a dream, and then all of a sudden this is what I wanted to do, right? It was an evolution. It was being open to possibilities, never closing any doors. And
Okay.
I always found myself, and regardless of what role I was in, I always found myself in positions that dealt with the trainers or the new hire orientation, or and I always just kind of had that inside me, like this is kind of cool. And when I was working for the Walt Disney Company, and I had an opportunity to go into a traditional training role, was when I realized, oh my God, I can actually make a career of something that I'm very passionate about. I've always been about others, other people. My high school motto was men for others. It was a all guys, school. And it just kind of went from there. And so it's not something that woke me up in the middle of the night with a lightning bolt, but it is something once that I decided that, hey, this is my life's goal and trajectory. It was awesome.
I love that, man. What is talk about craft leadership? What spawned that? What are you doing there?
So the reason I hung up my shingle is I like to tell people that due to a corporate acquisition, my future was freed up to pursue entrepreneurial dreams, as they say. So it was one of those things where it was a decision that I had to make, and there's no regrets at all. Craft leadership comes from this idea that one key does not unlock every door. And I learned that in leadership. I learned that in mentorship, that every person, every situation requires a different approach. I also have a love for craft cocktails. And so I wanted to, kind of take that same bespoke approach. And say, if I'm talking to you as an individual, Mr. Yu, or if I'm talking to an organization, I want to go in and I want to understand what is at the core of what needs to be fixed. And I'm not, like you said, if I'm going to fix a roof, I'm not going to sell you the hammer. I need to go and look at exactly what is needed, and I'm going to provide you exactly what you're going to need, handcrafted, very individualized, and very specific for your needs.
I love that. I think through craft, if I'm not getting things crossed up, I think through your work with craft, you developed a assessment of some kind, right? Called grit. Is that?
I did. Yes, it's the whole concept of embracing the grit. That's a mindset, and grit is an acronym, and it stands for get over yourself, reassess with honesty, invest in improvement, and then treasure the lessons and growth. Working with mentees, working in leadership, that your part of your job is giving people feedback.
Yeah.
You need to understand first of all, how somebody receives feedback, and then what are they going to do with it? So the get over yourself and reassess with honesty, that's how you receive feedback. If your ego's in the way, you're not going to listen to it. But if you listen to it, but then don't believe anything that they say, you're missing the kernel of truth in every piece of feedback. Then the second part is, what are you going to do about it? Listening is only 50% of the job. If I give you feedback and you're like, yeah, there's something, but you don't do anything with it, what a waste of time, money, and effort, and your potential. So this assessment that you can take will kind of give you some scores in all four of those pillars. And that's essential, right? Because if you're going into any type of, let's say, training program or leadership development program, or even a mentor relationship, understanding where you are with feedback is going to be absolutely important for you to be able to digest all this stuff's coming in, so you can move from point A to point B in that growth arc. And as a mentor, if you can't receive feedback well, you sure as heck can't give it well.
I love that. Matter of fact, I want to take the assessment. Grit-index.scoreapp.com. It's already in the show notes, but we'll go ahead and make sure we reiterate it throughout the show. So tell me, what exactly is the great slapping? Now, I watched the show called How I Met Your Mother. Now, that's a little bit off of the beaten path for me, but I vibe with it for some strange reason. But my favorite episodes were the ones about Slapsgiving. I don't know why, but every time those come on, I find them hilarious. I go back and I find them on YouTube now. I don't know why, but seeing people get slapped is funny to me. I don't know why that is. When I get slapped, it's not funny, but
well, okay.
I digress, but what's the great slapping? What is that?
Why isn't it funny, Mr. Yu, when you get slapped?
because it hurts when you get slapped.
Okay, it does, right? Slaps are painful. Slap
Yeah.
that moment that the impact happens, it hurts. But then after you get slapped, there's this moment of clarity where the cobwebs are knocked. You shake your head a little bit. I don't know what just happened, right?
Yeah, there you
In that moment of clarity, the world opens up a little bit, and whether you're asleep or you're passed out and somebody's slapping you around to revive you, that's the same thing when it comes to the great slapping. It's not a physical slap; it's a metaphorical slap, delivered with words, delivered with intent, delivered with genuine investment in you as a person. Because sometimes people are unwilling or unable to truly see what's holding them back. And if somebody cares about you, they're going to want to revive you. And if they try everything and you're not taking that breath that's necessary for your future development and unlocking your potential, they're going to have to slap you. And I know if you think back in your career, there are people that cared enough about you and in you to slap you, to wake you up. And they knew it was going to hurt, but they knew it was important for you to have that moment of clarity so you can move forward in the right direction.
No, I totally get that. And I remember a lot of those situations very, very candidly. Much of what the reason why I think I connect with you so much is because the things that you seem to care about are the things that I love talking about too. And you mentioned something about in our conversation about having mentorship with teeth in it. And I love that because I love for you to kind of get into why so many leaders kind of get mentorship wrong. I think maybe we might have touched on it a little bit earlier. People want to mentor people, but they don't want to be mentored. They want to coach, but they don't want to be coached. I think I even asked you in our pre-interview, who coaches you? I thought that was so important. I have people on our shows. No offense to anybody who's been on our shows, or any of our 50 plus shows so far, but they come in as mentors, coaches, and leadership developers of some type or sort. And a lot of them, when I go back and dig a little bit, they don't have a whole lot of time on the mentorship wheel themselves. They don't have a lot of time on the coaching wheel themselves, but they fancy themselves as coaches and mentors. And I guess I just find that a little bit strange. I'd love to hear your thoughts on where leaders get mentorship wrong and what does mentorship with chief actually look like in your assessment? Two-part question.
Absolutely. Love that question. And I'm going to go all the way back to ancient Greece.
Let's go.
Where Socrates said, the wise man is the one who knows he knows nothing. And if you, Marissa Meyer said, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? So those things right there, if you reach a point where you feel you've got nothing left to learn, that's a slapping right there, right? That's you need to be shaken up a little bit. And so there are individuals that feel that they are at the apex of their development. And I would argue you may be at a stair step or like a flat spot, but there's still more hill to climb. And I think that, and you mentioned it in your question, the transparency, the honesty, the authenticity that's required for somebody to really give that level of feedback that's meaningful. I write a lot about in my book that a mentor should not know everything, should not be the end all. That's not the purpose for the mentor.
Say that again, man. Say that part again. I think that's you can't gloss over that. That's too powerful. Say that part again.
Mentors should not know everything. They are not the end all experts. They are there to help facilitate your mentee from getting to point A to point B, to working through a problem and if you all you're do is just giving answers because you think your answers are gold or infallible, well, that's a problem. That's a problem because then the mentee ceases to think for themselves and only go to you for answers. So all you're doing is just enabling them to continue to not make decisions they need to make in their life.
My goodness. And mentorship with chief, is that kind of where you got the idea from, or is that something different?
It is. I just did a talk recently here in Orlando, and it was called Mentorship is Dying. And we're dying. It's dying. It's on life support, right? And it's because we reduced mentorship to what I say, limp handshakes, empty pleasantries, and awkward coffee chats. And, mentorship, we bubble wrapped it, right? Everybody's safe, everybody's secure, nobody gets offended, blah, blah, blah. But you know what, Mr. You don't grow in smooth. You grow in chaos. You grow in that rough feedback. You don't learn how to fly a plane in smooth weather. You learn how to really be a great pilot flying in rough weather and making it to the other side. The same thing with your own personal development. You need a little bit of that sandpaper to kind of rough you up a little bit to put that final coat on.
Love that, man. Who was the one that gave you the slap?
The one that, other than that first one, right, that really woke me up. I write about him in the book, and I call him my hero. His name was George, and he was a regional manager at Disney, and I was a young frontline manager, guest service manager, and he rode my butt, brother. His holding me accountable for everything was just, it felt rough, and at times it felt like he was singling me out for that level of scrutiny.
Sure.
To the point that I had it. I was done, and I ran into his office, and I kid you not, slammed my fist on the desk. And I said, George, why the hell are you so hard on me? And why? And I just start screaming at him. And he looks at me and goes, because you're capable of so much more. And I went, boom, right there. That moment of clarity was huge. And I shut up, and he turned around and slowly walked out of his office, because I was processing probably the biggest piece of feedback that I had up into the young part of my career, that sometimes is necessary to get people to unlock their potential. And that's why I call myself the human potential locksmith. Sometimes you need that moment of clarity to understand that this person sees and expects more than you, not because they're some sort of jerk. It's because they think you can actually do it. Because your potential is not where it should be or needs to be. And I'm going to help you get there. And sometimes, I'm going to give you some stuff that's going to be a little rough to hear, but it's because I believe in you. A mentor is like that boxing ring coach, right? That they're not always going to tell you you're great. They're going to tell you what punches you're walking into, how to avoid them. They're going to clean you up, and they're going to put you back in the ring because they know you can succeed and win.
That brings to mind a story. It was a rough one. I was in culinary school. Now that's not a story by itself, but when you were the age that I was, that is rough. Because I went into that thing like in my 40s. So all the kids inside there were like barely 18, 19, 20 years old. And I'm in a baking class, and baking, I can cook, but baking wasn't my forte. And the chef, he would beat me up on a regular basis. He would make examples out of me. Take my food and throw it across the room, kind of Gordon Ramsay style. And I'm like, why is he attacking me? One day I just said I couldn't, I bowled up against him in the middle of the class, in the middle of these 20-year-olds. I'm like, I just can't take no more of your mess. I was ready to snap. I found out, and my wife told me, he didn't tell me this to my face. He told my wife. I did that because I know he can handle it. Those are the kind of lessons I heard this story and I get it, but for me, I didn't get that. I'm like, why you put me on the spot and embarrassing me out here? For what purpose? You know what I'm saying? But I learned something later on down the line, way far removed from culinary school, that, you know what? I could have, even though I didn't like baking, that was in my head. So it affected my results. It affected the work I put in because I already had a preconceived idea that, you know what? I don't like this. This is not what I'm good at. And I kind of exercised that instead of, pushing a little further. So I get your point on that one, man. I want to get into your.
Can I just say that story choked me up a little bit, Mr. Yu, because that is exactly what I've been trying to evangelize, that moment there. Now, God bless you, because the culinary world is not necessarily the most nurturing in the kitchen. It is rough.
No,
it's brutal. They laugh at the concept of slapping. They're 5 levels ahead of slapping, right in there. But he saw that in you, and he knew the only way to get that out. And maybe maybe that was only his ability. He didn't know any other way because he was raised in the kitchen, let's say. So he did what he felt was necessary. But I bet you'd work for this guy again. I bet you would work for him in a heartbeat.
If I was back in that realm, I probably would. But
Yeah.
there would be some rage that was getting ready to happen. I don't think he understood what he was about to unleash. But that makes a lot of sense. So I learned a lot about me in the process. And I think what you're doing is just falling right in line with that, man. We hear these keywords. I kind of harp on it a little bit because I guess part of me cringes at hearing terms like leadership and mentorship and coaching and that kind of stuff, because I see people abuse it so much, or it's gotten so watered down, like you said. It's turned into it has almost none effect now. What do you think is key in separating the work that you're doing in these areas from the other options that are out there?
Honestly, there really isn't anything that I do at the core in my job, the technical skills and the other things aside, or about the book. There's really nothing special about it. It really is understanding that we didn't get to where we are by ourselves. There were some people that had an impact on you, and about giving back. I think you and I before talked about stewardship a little bit in our pre-interview.
Oh, yeah.
And stewardship is about making something better once you get it. Whether you get talents or money or people, once they leave your possession, once they leave your presence, leave them better than you found them. And that is that is simplistic in its core.
It is.
And,
it is.
The concept of the great slapping are just some context and some tools to help you provide that service, that stewardship to others.
I love it. Because of that book, I'm sure that you've heard from many people who found it profound. What was the biggest growth step for you from the great slapping?
Two things. One, I wanted to open eyes, right? I wanted to be that evangelist for, look, mentorship is dying and we don't want to pull the plug. We need to save it. We need to figure out how we can bring the experienced generation and the new generation together and not continue to rip at that fabric that pulls us aside. The other goal I had is I wanted the book to be authentic. And one of the best compliments that I've received from many readers is they can hear me in the book. Like when I put something in the book, it's not an empty thing. It's not crap. They can hear me say these words because they've seen me do it. They know that I have that belief and passion. And to me, that's the best compliment I can be paid.
I love that. Can you tell us a moment where you felt like you failed as a leader and what you learned that changed?
As a matter of fact, I can, and it's a relatively recent story. And I don't know if it was an organizational failure, but it was a personal leadership failure, and I will absolutely authentically call that, because I had always thought, being a leader was giving people space and trusting people, and I would literally tell my employees, they would come in and say, "Can I do this?" I said, "Look, I hired you for a purpose. I trust you implicitly. I don't hire anybody that I can't trust. So go do what you feel is necessary." And one of my favorite employees came up to me after I told her that, and she comes back in the room and she goes, "I just want to let you know, sometimes I need a leader." And I went, I got slapped. I got slapped by my employee, because you can delegate too much. You can trust too much. You can give up. And even though my best intentions, she needed somebody to take a little more space in there, or a little more time and understanding. So that was a huge learning for me. Again, that's one of those moments that I'm very clear in the book. Like, yeah, my employee trusted me enough to come back and really give me some tough feedback, and I learned a great deal. And that's something that I'll never make that mistake again because of that slapping that I got.
Oh, I love that, man. I'd be remiss if I didn't go a little deeper with that, because you're speaking to leaders, you're speaking to mentors and coaches, not just to me, but maybe even to yourself, but even those that are watching and listening. Tell me how you put that into practical action, because now you know that you delegated too much, and now you have to maybe perhaps put in more time, maybe time now you didn't feel like you had to start with. to put in more time to lead. What does that mean? What does that look like for you in that case and even beyond?
Well, I 100% didn't practice what I preach on that, because I said, look, one key does not unlock every door. And I managed this particular individual situation like it was a skeleton key and she was just another door I was unlocking, versus taking the time to truly understand what that person's about. As a leader, you can't lead like a shot with a shotgun, because you're going to hit stuff that you don't want to hit. You're not going to hit stuff that you want to hit, right? And so you need to be very bespoke. You need to be very craft in your approach, not just departmentally, organizationally, individually, because those are the key building blocks of your organization. And if you don't take the time as a leader, if you don't schedule time with these people, you don't ask questions, you're not interested in their genuine things that they need to be successful, you won't be successful. And if you don't show them the value that they bring to the organization because of that level of interest in really digesting and going deeper, as you said earlier, into what they need, then they don't value you and they don't value the organization. And I've discussed a lot with people recently in this concept of employee value employee value proposition. I don't know if you've heard of the EVP, but it's where organization, right? Yeah. But people will argue these days that the EVP is no longer at the corporate level. It's at that individual one-on-one manager employee level. That's where the rubber hits the road these days. So I hope that was adequate to your question.
All right. My goal is to try to get 4 more questions in before we close out.
Let's go. Lightning round. Here we go.
It feels that way, but I want you to share though. But I found out you're a former comedian. I didn't know that. That's amazing. How did that equate to the leadership work that you're doing? Is there a connection at all? Is there any kind of connective tissue in that?
There is, and it has nothing to do with leadership. It has to do that I enjoyed my captive audiences in classes.
Okay.
This is great. I have a whole audience for an hour, and they're paying me to do this. And but I will tell you that humor is, when used appropriately, is an incredible leveler in the room. It raises endorphin levels, it lowers stress, and I have always found humor and sarcasm to be a powerful tool in development, as well as in mentorship as well, because that humor helps soften the slap a little bit.
Sure.
When, especially in the sarcasm world, they have to understand sarcasm. Again, one key does not unlock every door. But yeah, I have found that to be an important tool in what I do.
I love that. All right. What's one slap you want every listener to walk away from this episode?
Get a mentor. Look, you're not an island. You didn't get there by yourself. Understand, and I go back to when you were remembering that slap that you got from that chef. You smiled, you grinned, and there was this moment of nostalgia and this moment of gratitude. Take a moment, close your eyes, think about those people that did that for you, that cared more than you cared in yourself and saw more in you. What did I say? Mentors don't settle for the person you are today. They push because they see the person you could be tomorrow. And remember those people and then give back, because then maybe on Mr. U's podcast 20 years from now, you're going to be recalling, there's somebody else going to be recalling you that did that for them. And that's power.
Now you're trying to add more questions to my list. How is somebody who's watching, listening, because sometimes I love to say that mentors find people, but I think sometimes people find mentors. I think kind of it goes both ways. How does somebody find a mentor based on that framework you laid out? How do they find somebody to be that for them? Once they realize they need to have it, first off,
yeah, that's absolutely the foundational step. You can't point to somebody and say, "Be my mentor," right? You can't.
They have tried and failed, but
it's because, and I've been doing some work on this recently too. Mentorship has a lot of weight to it, and it's scary for people. And start out asking somebody to be a coach, somebody to help me work through some skill development, build that relationship, build that trust. with the other, because it might be scary for the mentor too to say, I'm going to be your mentor, right? Yeah. Find people that will give you the slapping that you need, and not somebody that's there to be your yes man or yes woman or yes person and just only give you what you want to hear, like AI does. AI is only going to give you what you hear and tell you the best thinker since sliced bread. Good mentor. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Last two questions. All right. All right. Here's our penultimate question, if you will. All right. So I'm a strong believer in leading yourself well first. How do you lead yourself first in your household, in your community? What's that look like?
I think great question. I'm going to go, Mr. Yu, with the being a genuine person, being somebody that you are what you are, and you are that in everything you do. And for me, that genuineness comes from an interest in other people. And when you like the book, when people said, I hear you say this because this is who you are, that's important. If you write something, but somebody can't hear that in your voice, that's not really you. So I think the more you can be authentic, it's a big buzzword, right? Authenticity. Be who you are, follow your compass points, be strong, be genuine in your interest and love of others, and always walk with gratitude in everything you do. I think that'll show greatly.
Fantastic. And just you guys were, if you're watching us and joining us a little later on in the episode, Yogi has an incredible assessment. It's going to be called the Grit Index Assessment. Grit-index.scoreapp.com. It's not a personality quiz or anything. It's a great practical tool to help you kind of fill a gap between how you're showing up in leadership and what you need to maybe deal with and address, how you actually are leading. So I'm taking the assessment today after this show. Definitely encourage you to do the same thing. It's going to be grit-index.scoreapp.com. It's in the show notes, but of course, if you need it, we'd be happy to get it to you. Reach out to either one of us.
Yeah, they can also go real quick to craftleadership.net. There's links to that. There's links to my book, also other information about what I can help you with and unlocking your potential as well.
All right, craftleadership.net is also in the live chat for you grabbing it there. All right, so final question for today. And by the way, man, if I haven't said so, you're a fantastic guest. It was a fantastic conversation. I'm geeked up. I love mentorship, coaching, and leadership spaces. I love to be involved in those kind of communities and stuff. So this is great. All right, final question. We talked about it in our pre-interview. This is not to diminish the work that you've done. You've done fantastic work over the years. I'm going to temporarily take an eraser and wipe it off of the board. Everything you've done up to this point, off the board. What is Yogi doing with his life right now, most likely, that you haven't done before? I don't have any Jeopardy music, so you're on your own with that.
I want to be in a movie.
You do? What kind of movie?
I don't know. I want to be in a. I've always, again, hindsight being 2020. I've always had this. I was an acting major for about 2 hours in college, and I didn't do it because I didn't want to wait tables for the rest of my life. One of those things. So I chose something that could at least provide some income. But if I had a bucket list, I'd love to have an IMDb credit for a role in a movie. So if anybody's out there, craftleadership.net, I'd be happy to audition.
We got to get you hired. Okay. I appreciate that. That's good. That's one of the best ones I heard in a while. I like it. Well, man, thank you for your time in doing this, man. Let everybody know where they can find you and your work, man. And we'll get out of here. Go ahead, Yogi.
At craftleadership.net, best place to stop all for everything you need. And I have to compliment you, Mr. Yu. It is always wonderful to see somebody that's connected to the same why about developing and being very passionate about others. So it's been an absolute pleasure, sir. Thank you for your time.
Here, man. We got to stay in touch, man. I'm sure some great things on the horizon. I'd love to support you wherever I can, man. But thanks again for watching and listening, everybody. This has been a fantastic show. You can find us on all the social media platforms. So we are actually live right now. And of course, we'll be on all listening platforms within the next couple of hours or so. So thank you again for watching and listening. Find Yogi, craftleadership.net. Yogi and Mr. Yu, we're out here. Have a fantastic day. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening.